This video is brought to you by my loyal patrons. Pledge today and receive exclusive perks. Link in the description.
StoryBots.
Hi, I'm Evan Spiridellis.
And I'm Greg Spiridellis, and we're the brothers who started StoryBots.
Well, we started a long time ago. So when we started, the internet was brand new, dial-up modems, and I was just fascinated with the internet. The idea that you could make something and distribute it around the world over a phone wire.
We started StoryBots because finding safe, high-quality apps for our kids was a real challenge.
We wanted our kids to have fun learning on these amazing devices and to build things that were fun for us too as parents.
Personalization is the thing that makes StoryBots magical. We have dozens of starring you books that you can put your kids into, starring you music videos.
At the end of the day, StoryBots is about making things that we feel awesome about giving to our own kids.
And building things that make families happier.
That's our mission.
Greetings everyone, welcome to the first installment of a StoryBots Retrospective. This is going to be a multi-parter documentary series where we take deep dives into the many shows and specials throughout StoryBots' run. Think of this series as a novel, with each show and special being divided into chapters, or videos in this case. In each chapter, we're going to take a closer look into the production history, the stories and plots, the characters, the songs, and then wrap it all up with my overall thoughts in conclusion. By the end of this series, you will know pretty much everything you need to know about the StoryBots franchise. As of the making of this video, StoryBots is now 12 years old, and I thought what a better way to celebrate this occasion than to look back on how StoryBots was conceptualized. This was a project I've always wanted to do ever since I created this channel, and I'm now so happy to finally begin this huge undertaking once and for all. So if you're one of those people that have been waiting so long for this project, then I personally want to thank you for your patience. Your time and effort just watching this video means the whole world to me. You all have my gratitude, so I thank you. Now before we can discuss on what exactly StoryBots is, we need to take a trip back in time. Before StoryBots was created, before JibJab was founded, and even before the Spiridellis brothers became entrepreneurs. We need to go as far back as the 1970s, or as Tom Wolfe liked to call it, the Me Decade. In the years 1971 and 1974 respectively, two little brothers were born from the Spiridellis family, that being Greg and Evan. These two were quite literally your average folk back then. They both grew up in the Garden State of New Jersey, which actually is the same place I grew up in. Pretty neat. They also had a pretty normal childhood growing up as well. Shows they grew up watching include Schoolhouse Rock, Mr. Rogers, Charlie Chaplin, Looney Tunes, and a certain other franchise which we'll get to later. When it came to their education, they pretty much went their separate ways. Greg got an MBA at the Wharton School in 1999, and Evan got a degree in filmmaking at the Parsons School of Design in 1996. After their venture into college, they rented out a little apartment for each other in Brooklyn, New York.
My brother and I grew up in, I think, like a New York ethos, like, you know, in kind of that Northeast, like, you know, serious business. And I think somehow there's that kind of quintessential New York drive that we carried out here with us. My father was and is an entrepreneur. So I grew up in a house where in the 70s where my father he learned computer technology in Vietnam, brought it back and built like from the ground up. He was an immigrant, built one of the most successful technology consulting businesses in New York City in the late 70s and 80s. And on the flip side, our mother's an artist and a jazz singer. So I like to think like there's that kind of art and technology, house we grew up where I think there was like appreciation for both those things.
Then all of a sudden, they made a major breakthrough. They started sending little animated videos to each other via a phone line, which at the time was pretty revolutionary. They were only 100K in storage, less than a megabyte, and were fairly affordable to produce. With this in mind, this later gave them the idea of forming a little internet business called JibJab, which, fun fact, is actually a name that Evan just simply made up himself. Their main headquarters would be located in the sprawling Los Angeles, California. The company started their first years producing commercials and shorts for various clients, including Disney, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and PBS Kids to name a few. This was made in retaliation to the infamous .com crash in the late 1990s, where several clients from JibJab fell out of a job. Once that faded out, the company then started to produce little e-cards to send to family and friends, where you put your face in the animated figure that's performing a silly dance for laughs and giggles, which is a philosophy that the company still follows to this very day. They've also made year in review videos where they basically recap the year's biggest events, usually in the form of a classical music piece. This would become a staple for the franchise from 2005 all the way to 2014. Over time though, the brothers found that particular formula rather bland and found more interest in just producing e-cards as their main objective. While sorely missed by many people, it's pretty understandable why they opted to ditch this video series. Though technically they did bring it back briefly for the year 2020, making that the actual last year in review video for the company. But to be quite frank, it is kind of fitting that this of all years ended up being the final video for the company because, well, 2020 sucks. Now aside from a few small projects here and there, this was pretty much their status quo back then. What the company was, and still is, in its current form. There was, however, another series of videos that JibJab has produced, and this was what got the company to popular status. It wasn't the personalized e-cards that made them famous. No, it was something else entirely. Something rather unique at the time, though it didn't last much in the long run. The year is 2000, the new millennium, and the brothers were about to make a very ballsy move. They were inspired by the many articles surrounding the recent 2000 and 2004 presidential elections, and they wanted to put their own comedic spin on the idea, since no one has ever done it before. Yep, you heard me right. They were going to make their next videos on the controversial topic of politics. One of these videos, entitled This Land, was made during the 2004 presidential election and was a parody of Woody Guthrie's song, This Land Is Your Land. To the brothers' surprise, their video ended up being a worldwide success. It got so popular to the point where JibJab's own servers couldn't handle the massive influx of views coming in, so as a result, it got moved over to another streaming platform, Atom Films, where it got over 1 million views in less than a day. And when it was eventually re-uploaded to their YouTube account in 2007, it got a similar reaction, and is actually the second most popular video on the channel to this day, along with all the other videos from the early 2000s. Their popularity even earned them a seat on the late night show with Jay Leno. Pretty cool stuff. However, their success almost got cut short by a lawsuit. But no, it's not what you think it is. It was actually about the song they used in the parody. The Richmond organization, the supposed people who own the song This Land Is Your Land, threatened a class action lawsuit against the company for using their song for copyright infringement. But after some deliberation, the claim turned out to be bogus for two reasons. For one, the video itself is a parody and therefore is protected under the copyright law of fair use. And two, the song in question had entered the public domain in 1973, a good 30 years after they published the video. With this evidence in hand, the brothers ended up winning the case and distribution of the video continued as normal. They eventually decided to make customizable e-cards for these political videos as well, so if you wanted to star in these exact videos, yeah, you could. Well, at least back then. They would continue on this reign of success until somewhere in the early 2010s. I honestly don't know when they stopped exactly, but I do know why they stopped. Just like the year in review videos, they sort of lost interest in making these types of videos and wanted to continue the business of producing e-cards instead. Though personally, I think it was a smart move. Part of me is kinda glad that they didn't continue this formula. I mean, could you imagine if they still made political satire videos in current year 2024 with all the events that are currently happening right now? Yeah, it would get pretty ugly. I know a lot of people sorely miss these old videos from JibJab, and I can definitely see why. The videos were like a monument for the company in the early 2000s, but nowadays, it wouldn't really work that well in today's world. The constant bickering from social media influencers would have most likely soiled their reputation and wouldn't exactly look good from a business standpoint, so they just opted to continue with the e-cards, which was probably for the better. While not the same popular status as they once were, the company later stuck around for 25 years and are still at it with producing customizable e-cards to this very day. Quite the transformation, am I right? And that's pretty much JibJab in a nutshell. From a little tiny office in Brooklyn, New York, to evolving into a workplace of around 100 people in Los Angeles, California, the company has greatly evolved over the years. They started drawing little animations to each other via a phone line, to producing TV commercials, political satire parodies, year in review videos, rounding off their catalog with their current personalized e-cards. They also went through quite the journey as well, from surviving an internet crash to appearing on late night TV shows to even winning a class action lawsuit. They've managed to pull all that off in the end. JibJab is certainly not the biggest company out there nowadays, but it wasn't meant to be. They didn't try to be the biggest or try to stand out from amongst the crowd. They just wanted to have fun and make stuff that they can enjoy as well. You can definitely see that desire in their earliest videos, and that's what I find magical about JibJab. As their own motto for the company, if you find these videos funny, then that's all that really matters to them. Just be creative and funny.
It's all part of our quest to help you
Be funny.
be funny.
Be funny. Be funny.
Be funny. Be funny.
We're now in the year 2011. The Spiridellis brothers are now in their late 30s and early 40s, so they're pretty well into their adulthood by now. JibJab was still kicking hard in the industry, and were overall doing sustainably well. But it was around this time when they both stumbled upon a little snag within their adult life. Kids.
They're getting entirely too much attention.
Those things that scream uncontrollably that make you want to rip your ears out. The ones that throw their toys around like it's no one's business. And some that, well, yeah, those kinds. Like any parent new to babysitting, the brothers had quite the handful when it came to their young ones. But they were quick to notice the condition of kids media that their children were consuming on their tablets. The quality of kids shows that they were watching on television especially were of particularly low standard. We're talking the lowest of low quality here. Many of these modern kid shows in the early 2010s at least, whether educational or not, felt very dull and uninspiring to the point where the adults watching it with the kids would immediately lose interest 10 seconds in. It feels like that in every single aspect, from the dumbed down copy and paste characters with virtually no personality, to the cheap visuals and animation, to the lazy editing, to the bland, formulaic, very predictable, you already know what's going to happen kind of writing. There's no real substance to these kid shows aside from it only appealing to children, and that was the main problem for the brothers at the time. The fact that the content provided only entertainment kids would love, but nothing for the adults watching. They even went on record by stating that there wasn't a single kid show at the time that they would willingly watch in full with their kids. And from the massive amount of low quality kid shows being put on TV, can you really blame them here? Mind you, this doesn't apply to all kid shows back then. There are a few good examples sprinkled here and there, but those ones are unfortunately far from the majority of shows, and are few and far between them. And it was enough for the brothers to finally stand their ground and take action. Fortunately, they found a bright spot. Companies like Pixar and DreamWorks managed to make full-length films that are targeted for both adults and children with compelling stories, morals, and characters. The brothers were then thinking to themselves, if people can make good quality movies out of content primarily made for kids, why not do the same for a television series? And with that, Evan and Greg would make it a mission to create their very own kids property to entertain their own kids, as well as the world. First came the inspiration. What was it going to be about? What can we learn from this show? And most importantly, just what is it exactly? To that, they went back to their early childhood shows that they grew up watching in the 1970s to get a good idea for what kind of show they wanted to make. And they eventually stumbled upon a show that they fondly remember back in the day. And it's a show that has made such a huge cultural impact on everyone that it's been continuing to inspire little kids for over 50 years and is still going strong to this very day. And that show was Sesame Street. Sesame Street needs no introduction. The charming kids show we all know and love, famous for its use of puppetry, live action, and animation, all to tell important morals and heartwarming stories for all ages. Notably, the animated segments that played during episodes in particular were a heavy inspiration for them, and of course, the puppets used in the show were very eye-catching at the time. It was different enough from what you normally see on TV. But it wasn't too far off from reality, as the humans portrayed in the show give the illusion that it takes place in the real world. That and it taking place in a New York-style setting really says it all. With the amount of creative freedom Sesame Street has, it's pretty clear that there was a lot of passion within the craft, and that a lot of people really enjoyed making this stuff. It's no wonder Sesame Street is as popular as it is today, continuing to tell fascinating stories in mediums for over 50 years. And the brothers wanted to encapsulate that same feeling in their own property. Its parent show, The Muppets, was also a big inspiration for them. The humor especially was very noteworthy at the time, and they saw fit to base their creation over the idea as well. With everything set to go, Evan and Greg were ready to make their fantasy come true. Concepting and production started swiftly in 2011, and in 2012, with much excitement, their new franchise was born. Let's get into that, shall we? When concepting the idea of a brand new kids property, the brothers first had to wonder, well, what are we going to name it exactly? They had the idea of creating little robots that would entertain children through various different mediums. It took them a few months to figure out what they would call themselves at the time, but they eventually landed on the name StoryBots. Now suppose you have never heard about the franchise before, and then you see that name, StoryBots. What does it mean? What does StoryBots entail, and what can we expect whenever we hear the name StoryBots? Well, here's my definition. The name is comprised of two words, story and bots. The word bots in the name tells us that, okay, it's about robots. Simple enough. But what about the first part? Story. What does that mean? As the word suggests, the story means, well, a story, or a narrative. It tells us that there's going to be stories within the franchise, ways of showing events, realistic or fantasy, within the mediums they're presented in. So in the simplest definition, without even looking at what StoryBots has to offer, we can infer that StoryBots is about robots that have stories in it. Alright, seems pretty legit. As we'll see later in the music videos, they cleverly have stories within the music itself, in a way that's not too obvious for the casual viewer, but for those who pay closer attention to the finer details, myself included. That's what I really like about the company's title. The name alone is very convincing. It's short and easy to understand, it conveys a lot of feelings, like happiness and curiosity, and it does a great job at setting up for what the company does in the later years, and is something they still do in the present day, which I really love. Now that we've got the name out of the way, let's move on to designs. What you're seeing right now are the first ever patented designs of the StoryBots. As you can see, these designs are radically different from the ones you see today, and look almost nothing like their final counterparts. But there was a big reason for that, and it comes down to the design itself. Someone probably looked at these designs and said, yeah, these look like cool designs on their own, but how would we exactly animate them? It would be quite the challenge to animate these robots individually, and through the many different styles as well, so it was quickly chucked in the trash bin. They went through many different designs for the StoryBots, some even looking even more different to the ones we saw before. But after much deliberation, they finally decided on the design that would become the basis of the franchise moving forward. This depiction of two robots named Beep and Boop would become the first exposure to this philosophy, and funnily enough, would also become the first two characters in the franchise. These designs would later be used in StoryBots' first ever application, Beep and Boop, released in 2012. Among its popular success, they then made several apps and games revolving around the StoryBots, which eventually evolved into the infamous and ill-fated StoryBots Classroom. I've already made a video covering the website in full, so if you want more context about the website and the games, the link to that video will be down in the description. But getting back to the designs, they soon lay down the basis for how to create these characters with an easy step-by-step tutorial. Literally anyone can create these characters with ease. First you draw a circle for the head, then you draw a rectangle just below it for the torso. After that you can add the arms and legs of the robot, erase the curve of the circle on the inside and draw a rectangle for the chest plate, add the eyes on the head, eyebrows are optional, and bada bing bada boom, you got a StoryBot. Notice how easy that was to follow. Aside from the arms and legs, everything about the design is very simple. It's made up of simple shapes like circles and rectangles, things that are generally easy to make. This is also true for the coloring, which is the next step. There are a total of 3 main colors for a StoryBot. There's of course the main color for the body, which can be any color of your choosing, one color for the arms and legs, and one for the wheels. The color for the hands are relatively the same, being typical gray. And that's pretty much it. Just like the designs, the colors follow a similar format, where it's not too complex with various different colors, but keeping it down to 3 makes things much more efficient. This was an intentional move on the design team, as not only was it easy to make on the animator's side, but also for the fans watching, which is probably why there's so much fan art regarding StoryBots over the years, and it continues to be a mainstay of its popularity to this very day. Of course, there's lots of other factors like lighting, compositing, and shading when dealing with animation, but you don't have to be a talented artist if you just want to make some StoryBots fan art. So long as you have the basic format down, you're pretty much golden. And that, I think, is quite spectacular in my eyes. Once they got the design and animation down, it then came time for music. To that they called in a bunch of composers to help create music for the StoryBots. One of them being the famous songwriter and singer, Perry Grip, who would take the realm for a lot of the songs in StoryBots' catalog. Others include Gabe Shokoloff, another popular composer in StoryBots, Scott Emmons, who was also a writer for StoryBots at the time, Eric and Mark Weiner, John Frizzle, Adrian Spiridelis, Miranda Dawn, Jonathan Pratt, and the list goes on. I'll talk about them more once we get to the song collections themselves, but I think it's worth noting how much variety there is within these classic music videos, not only in the animation itself, but also within the music. It makes each one of them stand out from each other, and doesn't feel like it's becoming repetitive. I mean, think about that for a second. If every single music video had the same animation and music all the time, they would feel kinda samey and would stagnate significantly for most people. Not to mention how much labor the animators and composers would have with writing over 100 music videos within a 4-year quota. It would get pretty intense, I'm sure. I can respect the brothers for wanting to have variety in their music videos, since it's refreshing to see something being different from the norm. It was very innovative for the team. It draws a fine line between simplicity and variety. It's simple from its design and structure, but it's from that simplicity where there is so much opportunity at stake, hence the variety. Simplicity really does go a long way, just like the Sesame Street music videos they were inspired by from the very beginning. Simply amazing. One final thing to note before we get to the music videos is the design of the office that they worked in. Their workplace was essentially a giant warehouse in Marina del Rey, California. It was very spacious for an office building, complete with wooden arch ceilings for added effect. Along the walls of the building were giant posters of famous people with inspirational quotes to help the team get motivated to work. But there was one thing that was lacking in their vision. Something not that common in a regular workspace. So what was missing exactly? Well, they answered with
Slide.
In 2016, the brothers made a $20,000 investment to add slides to connect the second floor to the first. They essentially turned their regular office building into a fun adult playground, and the people loved it. Greg funnily said to himself one time, "If I had to sit in a meeting during the day, at least I can slide out of it." Literally. While not entirely related to the production, it does show how much creativeness the brothers exhibited throughout their life at JibJab. They wanted everyone to feel good about themselves, so by adding these things in their workspace, you could really see how much passion the brothers had for everyone. Nothing speaks true dedication than creators gifting their own workers. Am I right? JibJab's first project would be a music collection about the letters of the alphabet. Production ended sometime in early 2012. And on June 21st, 2012, the world was introduced to JibJab's latest kids property, StoryBots.
StoryBots.
The franchise was an instant success, as popularity spawned many series and specials in the years following. But we'll get to those eventually. StoryBots has made a lot of songs in its heyday. From 2012 to 2016, the company has produced more than 100 songs in its library. Golly. We have a total of 18 collections to look at, each one of them having unique visuals and music. So naturally, we'll start with the first collection, the alphabet songs, aptly titled ABC Jamboree. This was JibJab's first ever project for StoryBots. 26 songs in total, each one of them focusing on one of the letters in the alphabet. This would also be our first exposure to Perry Gripp's music, and if you've ever heard of Perry Gripp's previous works, you'd know that they are fire. And the music he's made for the alphabet songs is simply iconic. What I like especially about these songs is how different they are to each other. Each letter song has a different music genre, which Perry Gripp put to good use. For example, in the letter C song, they use a mix of guitars and synthesizers here.
I'm crazy for C. Continue craziness for C. My circuits computing.
Or in the letter L song, where they use an elegant harpsichord riff.
La 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 lemon light bulb.
Or in the letter Q song, where they go for a polka style track.
Q question for Q. Q question for Q. Tell me, have you got a question for Q?
All of these songs are very different in musical taste, and it helps with them by also having different animations to go with them. For a first music collection, it's pretty damn strong. It's a wonderful introduction to StoryBots music videos and embodies what StoryBots is as a whole. I would highly recommend giving these music videos a watch, since they are all a treat to listen to. However, it wouldn't be until 2018 where we got an extension to the collection. Composed by Gabe Shokolov, this new song, simply titled ABC Jamboree, was made in conjunction with their newest book at the time under the same name, bumping the total amount of songs to 27. It may be an outcast compared to the original songs, different composers and all, but it's still a great song regardless, and I also recommend you check that song out as well. Up next are the classic songs, which were produced around the same time as the alphabet songs. They are 20 songs about simple nursery rhymes. Now you may find this surprising, but I'm not the biggest fan of these songs if I'm being honest. That could just be me not enjoying nursery rhymes as much as other people do, but I found most of these songs pretty forgettable and I don't have any fond memories for any of them. The animation looks pretty decent though, don't get me wrong, but the music sort of falls a bit flat for me in my opinion, and that's probably because they're just nursery rhymes. I think it's one of those cases where no matter how much you spruce up the song, it still ends up being mushy on the inside. These are literal nursery rhymes we're talking about here. There's probably one or two songs I can vibe to. Rain Rain Go Away and Down by the Bay come to mind. but that's pretty much it. The rest are just the same old nursery rhymes we are so used to at this point. I tried to find who exactly composed these songs in particular, but they weirdly list the composer as just public domain. I mean, I know the songs themselves are from the public domain, but who exactly arranged them? I did find one guy listed on one of the songs, that being John Frizzle. Was he the one who arranged them? I have no clue. But interestingly, there's one more oddity about this collection I'd like to point my finger at, and it's from one of the songs in the album. The Bear Went Over the Mountain. Take a good look at the footage here. Notice anything strange? Yep. For some odd reason, the video is running at a choppy 12 frames per second. I didn't edit the footage here, guys. This is how it was actually presented back in 2014. All the other videos run at a steady 24 frames per second, as do all the StoryBots songs. But for whatever reason, The Bear Went Over the Mountain is the only song that runs at 12 frames per second, meaning every other frame gets cut off, resulting in a very choppy picture. What exactly happened here? Did something happen in the exporting phase when they were downloading the song to YouTube, or was there something wrong with the animation itself? I have no idea. I'm drawing a blank here. If any of you know the reason behind this blunder, please let me know. I would love to see if there was an original version out there with the 24 frames intact. Overall though, these songs are okay in my books. They're not necessarily bad, it just makes me want to fall asleep more than anything. But it only really applies to these songs. Every other StoryBots song we'll see later is much better. I would go back to them every now and then if I had to, but they're not my biggest priority. Next are the Animal songs, another well-known collection. 10 were initially made in 2013, and 2 more were added later. In each song, an animal would perform a silly dance with the StoryBots dancing in the background. It's actually our first time we see Antonín 341B in action as dancing background characters. But none of these guys do anything of note to reflect their characters here. They're just being used as placeholders to have someone dance along with the animals. Though we will see later in the collections how they tackle these characters in the early years, but we'll get to those soon. As for the music, it's pretty good. This is another song collection by Perry Grip, and like before, his songs are incredibly catchy. Tiger in the Jungle and Walk Like a Camel are my personal favorites. I think the animals dancing to the music here really adds to the silliness factor, which I'm all in for. Though I have to question how they exactly film these animals. Like, could you imagine if, let's say, the animal was like doing its thing, but then while the cameraman's looking away, it then starts charging up at them with brute force? Yikes. Regardless of how they did it, I think it's pretty cool. Definitely one of StoryBots' finest. Alright, here's a cult classic, the space songs. These ones, of course, are about outer space. We learn about places like the sun, the moon, the earth, and the 8 other planets in our solar system. These songs in particular were very popular amongst classrooms, and the kids absolutely loved them.
Everyone. The music never ends. We are such good friends, and we all orbit the sun.
We're also introduced to these little guys. They don't have any official names by the crew, but fans have popularly dubbed them as Latitude and Longitude respectively, so we're gonna call them that too. On their first outing, they travel to the sun by jetpacks and almost get burned alive. Then they travel to the moon, go to the observatory to view stars, spend vacation in a satellite, and climb up an absurdly long ladder in minus 400 degrees Fahrenheit to view planets. Actually, that's the least of my concerns. I want to know where that ladder ends. It can't be Earth, since we can't even see the ladder anywhere. So, where does it end? At the bottom? The bottom of the universe? I thought the universe doesn't end. Wait, is there an end? Or is it just endless and goes on forever? I wonder what it could be. That conundrum aside, I really like how the stories are played out, all connecting with the theme of space and focusing on an activity regarding the topic. Looking up at the stars and walking on the moon are all things we think about when it comes to outer space, and they execute that brilliantly here. I also really love how they bothered to give each of the planets their own unique personality. Some of them really fit the characters that they're given, like how Earth is bright and outgoing and she's so full of life, both figuratively and literally. Or how Uranus is a very socially awkward guy to be around and doesn't take care of his own pride, likely from his name. Or how the sun is this big central figure being depicted as a literal hotshot, as mentioned on several occasions.
I'm so hot, I'm so hot, I'm hot, I'm so hot, I'm so hot, I'm so hot, so hot. It's really hot, so hot. The sun is so hot. I'm so hot, so hot, I'm so hot.
That's his line.
All of these planets add some necessary substance to the songs, and they are a really nice addition to the StoryBots world, and I'm so happy that they later brought it back in an episode in Ask the StoryBots. Nice! The music would be our first by Eric and Mark Weiner, who specialize in rap music. Now, rapping is not usually my choice of music, but for these two guys, they're pretty good. I think it goes without saying that I enjoy most of their music. A lot of the tracks are ones I can certainly vibe with, and the space songs are no exception. Up next are the time songs, which I bet a lot of you probably never heard of before. These are songs about telling time in seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, etc. The animation looks really good with the flat textures and simplistic design. It really gives me those Noggin vibes back in the day. Rest in peace, by the way. And while we're on the topic of time, let's discuss something. The runtime of the songs. Every StoryBots song is around a minute long, with some exceptions. And that length is perfect. It's short and easy to digest for kids watching, and it also makes the songs more snappier, so the pace is always moving and doesn't pad out runtime. Hell, it's even flat out stated in one of the songs.
A minute is the length of this song.
Pretty neat. This would also be our first glimpse at Gabe Shokolov's music. Now, many people associate him with the theme song of Ask the StoryBots, his most famous work. And yeah, that song is still an earworm on its own. But the time songs I think are also well written. They're all incredibly catchy in my opinion. My favorite being 7 Days, not just for the music, but also for this little Beatles reference.
But you better get it straight, there's 7 days a week, not 8. The Beatles song is wrong, for the record let me state.
That I really love. In a way, I see a lot of similarities between him and Perry Grip, with both of them sharing a lot of traits with each other, even sharing similar voices. Gabe is for sure one of my favorite composers of StoryBots, and the time songs are definitely hidden gems in his collection. I recommend you give these ones a listen to while you can. Next we have the body songs. These ones are about the parts of the body and were first composed by Stephen C. Moody. Nothing really much to add to these songs other than the fact that they're alright. The animation is as good as always, and the music is pretty chilling. I like the soft guitar they use for these songs. It feels pretty soothing to the ear.
When you breathe in, you take oxygen from the air and into your lungs, and then they spread it to all the rest of you, from your toes to your thumbs, the respiratory system.
While not my favorite music videos from StoryBots, I gladly take this over the classic songs, let's be real. Not something too upbeat or intense, just something I can relax to. Ah yes, a certified banger, the vehicle songs. These are about the vehicles that we see today. The animation of these songs is pretty good, but the main selling point for me is the music. This is another collection by Perry Grip, and as always, all of his songs are extremely catchy. Drive a Truck still plays rent-free in my head every single day, and is becoming a problem. I actually can't get this out of my head. I don't know what to do. Please help me.
Drive a truck. Amigo truck. It's called a truck. Cause it's a truck.
Highly recommend you check these songs out as well. I still have them somewhere in my top 10. Though I must warn you, you might get an earworm from this, so please be careful. Another popular collection is the shape songs. These are about the many shapes like circles, squares, and triangles. The animation is incredibly good, but once again, the music slaps. This is yet another collection by Perry Grip, and as you're probably familiar at this point, Perry never fails to impress me. Circles in particular is one of my all-time favorites.
Circles all over the place, circles in the sky and on your face, circles, see them all around town, circles go round and round.
It's another collection I suggest you all take a look at, and is one I still rank very high. And here we have some more appearances of Team 341B in the emotion songs. These exhibit the many emotions we have running through our heads, and to show this, they assign an emotion to one of the StoryBots in the team. Beep would show happiness, Bang would be the scaredy cat, Bing would be the silly one, Bo would be the sad and emotional one, and Boop would be the typical grump. This was our first glimpse into the team's official personalities, and we'll see later in the retrospective how they handle these characters in their future series, and how some of them will evolve over time. And sometimes do a disservice to. But we'll get there, don't worry. I think it's interesting that Team 341B got its start in this music collection, not counting the animal songs. It really paved the way into how we come to know these iconic characters, and I think that's pretty charming stuff, don't you think? As for the music, it's also quite enjoyable. This is our first by Miranda Dawn, and she does a pretty good job here. I really love her mix of acapella and ukulele here. It makes her voice sound angelic in a way.
And maybe your best friends are here. Just give you good times, lots of cheer. Things may not go your way, but everything's still okay when you're happy.
Really love these songs. Highly recommend you check these out too. Up next are the color songs, and I think they're a really solid collection, no pun intended. These are about all the colors that we see in the world. The music videos would utilize stop motion and practical effects within their songs, and I'm all for it. I really like how realistic everything is, like the trees and grass for instance. The backdrops are very exquisite, with lots of gradients and techniques that I really adore. And overall, it's very pretty to look at, as I'm a sucker for anything practical effects. Nicely done. The music was composed by Jonathan Pratt, his only contribution to StoryBots, and he's another one that specializes in rap music. Again, I'm not too keen on the idea of rap myself, but I think he too did a good job. There are quite a few songs I love to vibe to every time I listen to them, and the added visual appeal to the music videos really enhances that feeling too. Now, I briefly talked about this in the Lost Media video that I recently did, and I'll mention it here. There was supposed to be a 10th music video for this collection, The Color Brown, but for unknown reasons, this music video never came to be, and only got an audio release in 2015. It is possible there might be a version out there that reveals this unseen footage with the music intact, but as recently confirmed by Evan himself, the music video never ended completion, and thus was left unfinished. What a shame. With or without The Color Brown, it's still a great collection. They are certainly ones I would recommend you listen to for yourself. Next in line, we have The Great Innovators, a rather unique collection if I do say so myself. Instead of the usual music video format that we're so used to at this point, they instead go for something different. These are essentially little puppet shows that describe the histories of the many famous inventors across the world. The stories themselves were structured like poems in a story, with every sentence being followed by a rhyme.
George Washington Carver, a child of a slave, was curious, clever, ambitious, and brave. On a farm where he lived, he was eager to know about all vegetation and what made it grow.
Funnily enough, the stories would later be turned into actual songs for the show Ask the StoryBots, but only 2 of them got this treatment, Marconi and Thomas Edison. A 6th song was also in their library at the time, but wasn't released until very late in 2020, for some reason. I have no idea why this is the case, but nevertheless, we have it now. This one was titled Marie Curie and Radioactivity, and was meant to be the 6th video of the collection. I've also talked about this one in the Lost Media video. If you want to see more about that song in particular, link to that will be down below. Overall, I really enjoyed these ones. Puppetry of any kind is always pleasing to look at, and these videos are no stranger to that. Next we have the number songs. These videos are dedicated to the numbers 1 through 10. Unlike the other collections which have a consistent style throughout their songs, these ones have different designs for each of the songs, which feel more akin to the alphabet songs back in 2012. That's pretty cool. The music is also very unique, going for a more western square dance vibe, banjos and all.
There's a number that you come to when the count's just begun. The simplest one you'll ever see, and its name is number 1.
Team 341B also cameos in this collection, but like the animal songs, they don't really delve much into their characters here. But it is nice to see them again, don't get me wrong. Nothing really much to add to these songs other than they're just good. Not my favorite songs in the world, but they're ones I listen to every so often. So yeah, good enough. And then we have the Veggie Boogie songs, another unique collection from StoryBots. These are silly songs about vegetables doing silly dances. And that's it. There's nothing to learn here, there's no overarching theme to these songs, they just exist. But I love it. It's a nice break from all the songs we've seen before, and the practical effects with the stop motion, as always, is really charming stuff. The music here is actually not from a composer we've seen before, but instead was sampled by an independent production music studio, Megatrax. You'll actually hear that name quite a few more times in the retrospective, as it'll become a main player in the production music for the franchise moving forward, so this won't be the last time you hear from this company. Regardless, I quite enjoyed these music videos. I think the silliness factor alone is what really does it for me. Gotta love those dancing vegetables. Am I right? Another iconic collection from StoryBots is the dinosaur songs, really popular amongst fans actually. These ones, of course, are about the dinosaurs that lived many years ago. We also follow the adventures of Latitude and Longitude again. Been a while since they last ventured, hasn't it? This time they travel through a time machine to the Jurassic period to experience all the dinosaurs from that era. But only after they saw all the dinosaurs, a meteor comes in and rains on their parade. They quickly jump into the time machine just in time before the meteor obliterated everything, and the rest is history. This would not be, however, the end to the dinosaur saga, as they later added 3 more songs for Ask the StoryBots and StoryBots Answer Time. But more on that when we get there. The music is another one done by the Wiener Brothers, and like before, they're pretty good here. All these songs especially are very memorable to me. This and the space songs I remember quite well back in the day. Even people like the Duchess of Sussex fondly remember these songs as well.
Such great educational programming for kids that's fun, so many good songs, and I've become that mom where I'm like sitting around with friends and I start singing like, Tyrannosaurus, that's the chorus, Tyrannosaurus. I was like, what am I singing? Oh my gosh, I'm singing Storybox. I'm singing Storybox. I am not singing Beyonce in that moment, I'm singing Storybots.
Amazing songs from the StoryBots. Definitely check these out while you can. They are that awesome. Next we have the profession songs. These are about the many professions we see in our daily lives. Like the alphabet songs, we get different animation styles for each of the songs. Nice. The music is pretty good too. They are composed by Scott Emmons and John Frizzle. As for the lead singer, I don't know who sings these ones exactly. They probably went uncredited. Also, another weird anomaly that once again got mentioned in the Lost Media video is the Scientist music video, the 10th song in the collection. Just like the Color Brown song, this one never got a proper release, only an audio track. But this time we actually have some screenshots for what the music video would have been like. Designs by Nicholas Ilek reveal all the scenes that would have been incorporated into the music video, but sadly, none of this ever came to light. What a pity. Other than that, there's nothing really much to say about these songs. They do the job quite well, just like all the others. Up next are the behavior songs, another great collection. These are all about the things we do in routines, like brushing our teeth and cleaning our room. I really like the CGI here and the bouncy nature of the atmosphere. This is also another time where Team 341B gets used again, and there are quite a few moments this time where they actually stay true to their character. I like how most of the songs where Beep is like a mentor figure and makes sure everyone's doing their job right, as well as Bing being the clumsy one and always gets himself into trouble. It's those moments I really adore. The music itself is just excellent. It's another one by Gabe Shokolov, and as always, his music is very catchy. Cleanup Time has been in my head quite a few times now, and should really replace the modern cleanup song, let's be honest.
Clean up, come on, it's cleanup time.
See what I mean? These are some fantastic songs right here. Definitely check these out too. Then we have the holiday songs, probably the shortest collection we have, clocking out at only 3 songs. These ones are about the 3 main holidays, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. Nothing much to say about these songs other than the fact that they're catchy as always. Perry Grip's responsible for these songs, and like I've said numerous times already, his music is pure gold. The animation looks as good as it always does, and overall has pretty great music. Nicely made, Perry. And finally, we wrap things up with the Barnyard songs. These songs are all about the animals that we see on the farm. What's interesting here is that this collection was released at the exact same time as the companion show StoryBots Super Songs, marking this one as the final collection in the early years. And what an interesting way to end it all. What I really like about this collection is the amount of callbacks used here. The song This Is a Cow has a pretty subtle yet hilarious reference in it. This line,
"Woo, kids, feed me some hay! Feed me some hay, kids, feed me some hay!"
is a reference to this line.
Bitch, get out the way. Get out the way, bitch, get out the way.
Quite astonished they allowed that line to be used in the kids' song. Pretty crazy. Speaking of that song, the title of it is actually a running gag within the other songs, as they use that line quite a few more times actually. Every time you listen to any of these songs, you'll always hear the line,
"This is a cow, this is a cow.
This is a cow, this is a cow, this is a cow.
This is a cow."
I know I'm not the first person to point this out, but goddamn, that's so clever. This is another one done by the Wiener Brothers, and time again, they were always consistent with their quality. This Is a Cow was probably the most iconic song of the bunch. Not exactly the grandest or the biggest swan song to early StoryBots songs, but an interesting one nonetheless. Now there is one more collection I've yet to talk about, but it's one that never got the opportunity like the others. The Great City Songs. This is yet another topic I mentioned in the Lost Media video, and it was certainly a big collection. How big exactly? 30 songs. 4 more than the alphabet songs. Yowza. Now the history behind these music videos is rather interesting. These songs were going to be about the many cities and tourist locations across the globe. At the time they finished half of the song's animations. Those include, if not limited to, Beijing, Los Angeles, Mumbai, New York City, Paris, Seoul, Chicago, Istanbul, London, Marrakesh, Mexico City, Rio de Janeiro, Rome, Sydney, and Tokyo. The first 6 songs were finished by Perry Grip, and would have most likely continued with the songs during production. However, amid their progress, they couldn't find a successful partner at the time, and when Netflix eventually bought out the company in 2019, they saw no interest in continuing these songs any further, and as a result, production ceased. Only 2 songs were ever released to the public, that being Paris and Beijing, both of which were used in the show Ask the StoryBots. The rest of them were shown by various animators in their public portfolios. It's pretty undetermined if these songs will ever see the light of day again, though given Netflix's current circumstances, it's most likely not going to happen. A huge shame really, as we'll probably never get to see its greatest potential ever again. But you know what they say. Never say never. If I were to describe the early years of JibJab in one word, it would have to be distinctive. I think that's the best word to use here. Going as far back as the 1990s, JibJab as a company went through a lot. From sending little doodles through phone lines, to producing political satire videos, to facing a lawsuit that almost ended their reign, to showing up on late night TV shows, to making funny e-cards, to producing one of their most successful kids properties of all time, they had it all. JibJab clearly had a creative vision when making content, and it's exhibited throughout all their media, the StoryBots music videos especially. With the exception of that collection, none of them feel repetitive or cookie cutter. They each have their own unique taste and feel in both music and visuals. The brothers fully knew that their kids would love their content if they themselves can enjoy it with them. There is no denying that the team had lots of enjoyment experimenting and creating these videos because they too wanted to have fun. And there's no better company to manifest that desire than JibJab. It may not be the biggest internet company anymore, but it was rather distinctive, was it not? Now normally, when most of us think about showing StoryBots as someone who's never seen it before, our first instinct is to show them something very popular amongst fans. Something like Ask the StoryBots, or StoryBots Super Songs, or Super Silly Stories of Bo, or StoryBots Answer Time are the first things we think about. All of which are fantastic examples, don't get me wrong. Hell, I still recommend these to newcomers. But if you want someone to understand why StoryBots has this big following, why it's gotten so many awards over the years, and why it's so special for a lot of people, show them one of these songs. And hopefully, they'll get it. It leaves a very strong first impression to viewers watching at home, and yet also leaves them wanting more. And boy, will they get more. Our long and treacherous journey has only just begun. Ask the StoryBots, I'll happily be waiting at your front doorstep. You're probably wondering something. Hey Stoner, didn't you say you were going to have this video up and ready by June? What gives? Well, yeah, I haven't forgotten about that, and it was originally going to be released last month in fact. However, some unexpected events occurred during that time slot. I won't get into too much personal detail, but in short, things have not been going well for me recently. A lot of real life situations got in the way of my video making, and I kid you not, there were legitimate times where I just didn't have any motivation to make anything. And at this point, just seeing the positive feedback from both fans and the entire crew from StoryBots really enlightens my heart during these times. Just seeing my hour-long videos get any sort of traction is what really does it for me. And with all those recent props that I got from the original set, I seriously couldn't ask for anything better. You all mean so much to me for that. I am eternally grateful for all the support you gave me throughout these months. You wouldn't believe it. I will try to be more productive when it comes to StoryBots videos. I'm actually working on some scripts for a couple more videos I have later down the line. When they'll release, I'm not sure, but I will notify you all when they're ready to release, so please keep a lookout. Oh, and speaking of the StoryBots team, I've actually uploaded this video on a very special day. Someone's birthday, in fact. Whose birthday exactly? Well, who else but the man himself, Evan Spiridelis. The man's turning 50, guys. A real champ for making that milestone. If you're listening to this, Evan, I just want to wish you the most wonderful birthday ever, and I hope you and Greg are having a fantastic day right now. Keep up the good work, you two. I love you so much, and once again, thank you for everything. Now it's time for the Creator Spotlights. This is where I pick 3 random people that made some content that I think are worth shouting out. My first shoutout goes to someone you know far too well, Sylvian Kawaii 289. You may recognize her on multiple occasions for being the narrator of both my Ask Bang videos, a third one coming soon, and has participated in all the fan art showcases up to this point. There's no getting around it. She's a big StoryBots fan. The piece of work I'm going to be sharing are 2 little animatics she's made, Tiff and Softy and Connie Gets Hit by Rita. Both of these are only a few seconds long and are incredibly short. Still plans on making more short animatics like this in the future, so keep your eyes peeled for those ones as well. They are certainly an interesting watch, so to speak. Staying on the topic of early StoryBots songs, my next shoutout goes to someone who's made some pretty good fan content, Yellow Star Studios. Benjamin has made 2 fan animations from official StoryBots songs, You Need an N and Time for Tea. While I can't say that they're better than the official song, since that would soil the original source material, I do think that it's pretty faithful in adaptation. Nicely done. He too plans on making more of these animations in the future, and I recommend you check both of these out down below. For my last shoutout, I'm going to give it to a crew member of StoryBots who's made an original creation, Jackson Reed. His piece of work I'm shouting out is titled Fat Cat Kite Fight. Yeah, that's literally the title. It's a 1-minute short about 2 cats fighting over kites. I won't spoil it, but in short, it's pretty entertaining. Definitely give this one a watch when you can. Well, that's pretty much it for me. No major updates or anything, but there will be more StoryBots videos coming later. As always, be sure to stay notified for future updates. I hope everyone has a spectacular day, and I'll see you all next time.